This is Straight to the Point. I'm Eric Von Wade, your host, and this is my first time hosting this. I'm excited about it, especially with my special guest, City Councilman Ben Molina. Ben, how are you doing?
Wonderful. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming in. I tell you, I've known Ben for quite some time, and I've always been impressed with how straight to the point you are, which I think is perfect for having you here on Straight to the Point. It's you're not somebody who minces a lot of words, but you also take a little consideration for everybody involved so that nobody feels that they're getting roughed up, so to speak, in the political landscape that we have. And that's something in this day and age, because it seems we really are in a world where politics are all about opposition and combat.
Yeah, well, for me, it's about being a team player and being able to build consensus. We talk about different issues and items on the agenda during our council meetings, and there's sometimes where I may agree with the other council members. Sometimes we disagree, but I know that in the end, we need to be able to work together. We need to be able to communicate well together, and I think we've been able to do that for the most part here with this current council. And I think we because of that, we are able to see a lot of good things happening now in our city.
Well, I'm impressed. It wasn't that long ago. I guess maybe it's been a little bit longer now. It ages me somewhat. But back in the 90s, we had a much more divided council. There was a lot of personal attacks, things that distracted from what you're talking about. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a passion, in my opinion, about what it is that we want to see the city do. But that means that people are going to have differing opinions.
Yeah, I was talking to a gentleman just last week, and one of the comments he made was, "Well, you guys don't debate anymore." And when you're at the council meeting, there would be a lot of back and forth between council members. One of the things that has helped with that and helped us to be able to move the ball forward is we brought in a new city manager. He's been with us for probably around 8 months now. And one of the changes that he's made is he is now giving us our agendas a full week in advance. So now we have a lot more time to get our questions answered and really study the issues. Before, we were getting them just a few days in advance. And so when that happened, we'd have just the weekend really to go over the agenda. And so come Tuesday during the council meeting, if we didn't have our questions answered, we'd ask them right then and there, and it would at times lead to some conflict. But now that we're getting our agendas a full week in advance, we have plenty of time to get prepared for the meeting. So that has allowed the meetings to run a little bit shorter. We're a little bit more efficient. And especially for me, in my case, I get more time, even that much more time, to really take a look at the issues.
Well, I have to say, and again, that is one of the things I enjoy about the way you conduct yourself. And in fact, maturity is something that you typically associate with age. And you're one of the youngest faces up there. I don't know what your actual age is. I haven't asked you. But you were clearly younger than a lot of council members that we've had in the past. So here on Straight to the Point and Coastal Bend today, I have to say it's nice to see that you've not only been young, but you have also been mature. And you've brought a level of maturity, I think, to council. And are you a Corpus Christi native?
No, I'm not, actually. I was actually born and raised in Kerrville, Texas.
Wow.
And but I've been here for over 20 years, longer than I lived in my hometown. So I'm pretty sure I'm safe in calling myself,
Well, I mean, 20 years,
hometown, yeah.
Right. I mean, Kerrville's a great place, though. And, that may be, I was hoping you were going to say yes, because there's a lot of folks that are going to go, well, that's why he's so calm. He's not from Corpus Christi. But really, Kerrville is a beautiful place. Texas Hill Country is one of my favorites. And, it's one of my favorite places to go and hunt and enjoy the outdoors. Mm-hmm. But Kerrville, right next to a whole lot of tourist draw that is up there. And I'm sure you got a little bit of that overflow from Utopia and more specifically Fredericksburg. But, is tourism a big part of what you look at when it comes to Corpus Christi?
Here in Corpus Christi, there are several draws to the city, and tourism is near the top of the list. There's things that we want to do to make sure, or that I want to do to make sure that the city maintains that level of attractiveness. We want to build on that, and the more people that we have visiting our city, they bring in hotel occupancy tax, They bring in sales tax, and so that just adds to what we can offer as a city.
Well, and Ben Molina is not just a council member and involved in things that make all of our lives that much better, but you live here 20 years. You can call this your home, right? But you're married, you have children, and you have a business here.
Yes.
These are things that seem to me would be a natural motivator to get involved to make things better. Was that one of the reasons why you got involved in politics to begin with?
Yeah, it especially started hitting home when I started having kids of my own. I've been married to my wife Jennifer, where this year it'll be 15 years.
Wow, congratulations.
15 years.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 kids. My son is 12, and then my daughter's 8. And so I'm starting to look at their future now. Right. Before it was just about me and my wife and what our plans and dreams were, but now we've got 2 kids at home. And I want to make sure that when I leave the city council, that I want Corpus Christi to be better than what I found it. Right. And so there's things that I want to do to try and improve the area. My goal is to make sure that Corpus Christi is a place that when my kids are grown, they've gone through college, that Corpus Christi is a viable option for them to make their home at.
Right. And it's sometimes there's a single incident that's a catalyst for creating a large part or all of who the person is when they have that drive to get into public office. And I don't know, was there a single incident that was the trigger for you? For me, I can tell you, just doing what I do, it was a simple thing that seems ridiculous now. But I was a kid in line at Handy Dan, which is right next to the popular place in Hamlin Shopping Center. Now I think it's the Family Dollar. But this woman cut in line in front of me because I was a kid and I lived across the street. I'd walked across the street, and she could. Ever since then, anytime I see people abusing their position, I think that was really it. That was the first time I felt indignant about something, and it was so small, but it has stuck with me. I mean, I remember it. I was maybe in the kindergarten, something along those lines. Was there any element of anything that you think back to that, this shaped how you feel about things, that drives you to make things better?
Well, several things, I think. I have always got fulfillment from serving and helping.
Right. And
so many years back, I was a member of the board of directors for Habitat for Humanity, and I worked my way up until I termed out as president of the local chapter. And then I also got involved with the young business professionals, and their mission is to attract and retain young talent here in Corpus Christi, and try and fight brain drain. We wanted people to, once they graduate, to make their home here in Corpus Christi and not move to Austin, Houston, San Antonio.
I like that organization, by the way. I volunteered to help them whenever I can. They're a great group.
Great group. So I served on the board there for many years. And then I also served on the board for the Westside Business Association, where I had served as president there also. And in each of these organizations, and there's other committees and other organizations that I was a part of, but these 3 organizations, when I was a part of them, in each organization you're helping one segment of the population, and like I said, I get my fulfillment from helping and serving, and so the opportunity came up for me to run for council, and so I saw that as an opportunity to help the entire city. And what kind of spurred that on was during my involvement with Leadership Corpus Christi, I went through the program, and I got to see what really happens in the city. I got to learn much more about the area, and it really opened my eyes to some of the issues that are happening here in Corpus Christi. And so the opportunity presented itself, and I took that leap of faith and ran.
Right.
And luckily I won.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm impressed that you were part of Leadership Corpus Christi. Unfortunately, you weren't part of class 34, the best class ever. But no, that's what everybody says who goes to Leadership Corpus Christi. It's the best class ever.
I almost said it. I'm class 42.
That's all right. Well, I found out, what are they on, class 75 now or something?
I lost count already.
But yeah, time goes by so fast. But that is, if you ever have an opportunity to participate in Leadership Corpus Christi, it is worth every second of your time,
yes.
Whatever you do. And that is one of the things I was going to ask you when you were, talking to me about building consensus and the things that you do in your philosophy. That really is one of the things that they teach you in Leadership Corpus Christi. And for the longest time, I've been around for a while. I had broadcasting since I was 22 for a moment, then turned 23 pretty quickly after. But, I thought that it was probably an indoctrination program just to brainwash you into rubber stamping whatever it was that was the agenda for so long, usually involving taxing our way into prosperity, which I've never seen work. But when I said, you know what, I'm going to see what this is all about. There's an opportunity. I was in. It really was directed by the class. I mean, they didn't try to artificially shape one way or the other. And they teach you how to get along with people that are not going to agree with you immediately. And many people, they taught how to send emails that were not all in capitalized letters. It's like you're yelling at me all the time. But little things that help perception. And sometimes it takes an organization like that, because you can't go to somebody and say, it looks like you're mad all the time when you send all caps. It's just, too much. Yeah. Wingy-dings or that font, nobody could read. But yeah, it was a great thing. And I tell you, it's like I heard a rabbi say this one time. And I thought this is poignant for people to think about all over the place, that God gives you brothers and sisters to teach you how to love people you don't necessarily like. And that's kind of a philosophy I think we could apply to a whole lot of things when it comes to government. There's a whole lot of people I like what they do and they vote for, but they're not as much fun as Ben. And I like the way you think, and at the same time, you're very personable, and you haven't lost that. And that's not easy to do, because once you're on council and you wear that cool little pin, everybody wants to dominate your time, right? I mean, everywhere you go, if somebody recognizes that there's somebody that wants to talk to you, hey, Ben. And a lot of times people become a certain type of personality because they try to manage that in a way that they, there's no real class for how do you become a city council member and deal with all this. Even Leadership Corpus Christi doesn't really prepare you for all of it.
It doesn't.
How does that wear on? I mean, you go out, you go to dinner, or you go to a club or whatever it may be. Do people respect your time for the most part?
For the most part, yeah. There's times where I'm at a restaurant or at a grocery store, and people recognize me, and a lot of times they'll smile and wave, or even say, thank you for serving, which is always encouraging. Yeah. But then, of course, there's times where I'm out in public, with the family, and someone will come up and want to talk about an issue that's concerning them, and most of the time I'm okay with it. It's part of the job. This is what I signed up for, and so I want to be approachable. Sure. I want people to feel comfortable coming up to me if they see me out in public, and like I tell people, if you've got an issue that's bothering you, and if I can help, let me know. I can only help you if you tell me about it. Right. So I know there's times where people will complain about an issue, and then throw their hands up and say, "Why isn't the city doing anything about it?" Right. Well, if it's bothering you that much, let me know, and let's see what I can do to help.
And I can say this from personal experience. If you call it, what is it, 826 City?
826 City.
826 City. I remember that now. I haven't had to call it in a while, but I had a street issue in my neighborhood where I lived. And I called because this was before you were on council. But I had called and told them, hey, there's a big problem. We had these new trash trucks. We just got the automated trash trucks. Every time they turned in our cul-de-sac, it was buckling up the road so much. My four-wheel drive truck, the transmission was dragging across the pushed up caliche. I thought they were going to do a quick top patch job. Nope, they came out and they said, yeah, this road was built in 1982 and it has not been redone since. And they came out, and there was a time where I almost wished it took a while, but they went down to the subsurface, redid the entire thing. They told me that very few people actually ever call to report road problems. They will write the newspaper. They will call into talk radio. And I just, when I had a radio show, I would redirect them, and we oftentimes had counselors or mayors or whoever would call in. But it's okay to vent about how we got to the place where we are, but if you don't tell the people who are in their office hired to do the job of addressing these issues, then it sometimes takes a while. And I think that was kind of interesting. It's almost like this has turned into an era where it was letter writing to your congressman. Back in 1992, our high school class got political guests were coming in, and I remember we had it was not 1992, that'd be 1990. But we had a congressman come in and say that they addressed issues with a high priority when they had a flood of letters. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a flood of letters was 7 for a huge U.S. congressional district. Now that, I would have thought hundreds. You watch TV, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, there's bags of letters coming in. It's not the way it is. Do you get bags of emails, so to speak, or phone calls? How does it? Email you'd think would be easier today, but I think fewer people are emailing their city council or elected officials than they were writing letters.
Yeah. So I try really hard to stay on top of my emails, and if there's an issue that I can help with right away, then I'll reply back with a response or forward that to the appropriate city department or even the city manager, and that way it can get attention on that side. But there has been instances where I get an email and someone's complaining about an issue, and they'll say that they've reached out to the city, they reached out to many different people and can't get a response. And so one of the things I'll do is I'll ask city staff or the city manager, show me your records. How many times has this person called about this particular issue? And more often than not, there's no records.
What is our public comment like these days? Is it civil?
And we definitely want to see something happen with that courthouse.
Hi, my name is Sam. I own a local carpet cleaning company in Oklahoma City called ProX. I use Blip primarily for brand awareness. I think outdoor ads are great for that. Before Blip, I got quotes for billboards that were around $2,000 to $5,000 per campaign. And for a small company starting out, that's sort of out of reach. So I was thrilled when I found out about Blip. I especially like that I can set my own budget. I can change my ad anytime I want to. I had a logo change a while back and I had the new one up and running the same day. So Blip gives a lot of companies access to billboards who otherwise wouldn't have had access to it. So keep up the good work, Blip. Thank you.
The first axe throwing facility in Corpus Christi, Armory Outfitters Axe House. We're at 4050 Weber, next to Favor. Like bowling or darts, except axe throwing is actually wicked cool and so much fun. No experience needed. Our expert coaches can teach anyone. How about yourself? Or for your birthday? Or for Valentine's Day? Ask them to be yours. We even host weddings. It is the Axe House. Come now.
What is our public comment like these days? Is it civil? There was a period where it was not so much, I guess, for a while.
For the most part, it is civil. One of the things that we've done is public comment is facilitated by the city secretary and the city attorney. And so it goes smoothly. Of course, we have a high turnout when there is a popular issue. But then there's times where there's maybe just a dozen people that show up. Public comment, I want the public to know that public comment isn't the only opportunity for you to reach out to your council member or the mayor or even the city manager. A lot of us, if you go to the city's website, we have our cell phones available on the web, and we also have emails available on the web. And so for me, I want to be easy to access, and I try to be really just responsive.
Right.
So emails, I try to respond to them right away. Phone calls, if I miss a phone call, I try really hard to call back as soon as I can. And just trying to manage that and still being able to provide a level of service to the client, which is our neighbors and the residents.
Well, everybody wants to call me back, so I don't know if I can. But you do a really good job, and the truth of it is, no matter who you are, when you're inundated with demands and requests, staying on top of that's not an easy thing to do all the time. But I will say this: you seem to really do follow through, and it's not easy. It's a young guy from Kerrville, born out on a ranch, enjoying all the great exotics that they have there in the hill country, working your way up, taught yourself to read by candlelight. Well, but I mean, Kerrville is a much quieter, slower place than Corpus Christi, and in a good way. If you ever take a vacation there, there's a great Main Street through Kerrville, and I love beautiful area. And so, but really, you've come into this, and you don't seem to be ever intimidated or in the least bit shaken by anything. And do you hide it well? Are you ever nervous? Does anything ever get to you where you feel some anxiety?
Not a whole lot. It's funny, and that just comes from life experience,
Sure.
And dealing with different types of personalities.
I thought you were going to say Axis deer. For some reason, it's because they're all in Kerrville. But no.
No, and I'd like to say that part of that is due to again my time in leadership, Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
You learn more about your own personality, and then you also learn about different other personality traits and how to work with those. But I've matured enough, I think, to where if people are upset or angry, that I have that ability to just maintain a level head.
I don't think I've ever seen you be upset. Have you ever gotten angry on council?
Not on the dais, no.
Okay.
No, we have our executive sessions during council meetings. That's where we go into the back room with our attorney.
Right.
And there has been some really heated
Stress
discussions.
moments, yeah. Well, I mean, that's natural, and that happens, and I think it is a wise thing. Council, even if you have a disagreement and a split vote, really it's like a management scenario. You don't want to have your arguments amongst your managers in front of everybody else and other businesses. That's why you have an office or a back, so you can have that in private, because it's a natural part of things. I mean, if you've ever been in broadcasting, let me tell you, behind the scenes, it's everybody's enemies one moment, and then they've forgiven, made up, but it's because it doesn't happen on camera. You don't want to do the same thing here. You really want to have set a good example, and the more you can, I think, keep things calm, the better discussion you'll have. The one thing that I see that we get lost in from time to time is that we turn a debate about an issue into personal jabs and jeers because somebody feels stung or embarrassed that they may have, been wrong or appear to be wrong, or somebody disagrees, or somebody's advocating for something that they disagree with. And that's where we lose any real productivity in a debate. You've got to have substance, vim and vigor, great passion, but if you stick to the issue, then we don't ever have the problem with people being called, names, slurs. All of that is just a part of getting back at somebody else's ego for our ego feeling stung.
Yeah.
And it's not really productive. If you're passionate about an issue, you don't want to distract with those things because you'll lose the focus everybody has.
For the most part, I'm really happy to say that this council that we have right now, we work really well together. We've been able to get a lot of things accomplished because we are able to have those discussions and not take things personally. There's times where we disagree, and like I said, during executive sessions, sometimes it gets heated. But once we come to a decision, that we just move forward.
Right.
For the most part, there's no.
You win or lose, right? And once that's done,
you move forward.
On, yeah.
You move forward. And one thing that I keep in mind is there's people that are watching our council meetings. Some of these people are businesses that are looking to relocate to Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
And so there's opportunity there, and
more of those probably than actual citizens watching the live broadcast.
Yeah.
I know this sounds somewhat pessimistic, but the reality is, to me anyway, if you're going down before public comment on a regular basis, you have political aspirations or a vested interest in what's being discussed. It's not always the most exciting thing, and that's what's sad, is that our city council is doing some very exciting things, but the business of doing that, it's like, it's watching a business meeting.
Yeah.
But it's there for the record and for good reason, because at some point in time, it may become very interesting when additional events occur. And I can go back to years ago when we had a city manager notify council that we had a crack in the dam that was going to prevent us from allowing it to fill to full capacity. And we were in a drought, nowhere near full capacity, so nobody was concerned about it. Well, we had torrential rains, and a month later, there was pandemonia and emotion. And nobody told us, well, it was there, and you could go back and see. Then it becomes relevant. So it's there for a record and a purpose. But the people who watch it more, I think, than anything else, is exactly what you said, Ben. They are business people looking to see what's our climate like.
Yes.
Is it business friendly?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the last thing we want to do is make them feel like some have in the past, in years past, that this was not a place where you would be welcomed and hugged like the favorite son returned home. This was, which is what we should do. I mean, if a business wants to set up here in Corpus Christi, I think we need to do everything we can in order to help them succeed and establish themselves. And there's a ton of great programs here in this city, and so very few people know about it.
Yeah, this council, the majority of the people that are on council that I serve with own their own businesses.
Mm-hmm.
This council has been very pro-business friendly, pro-growth. And so we want those businesses that are looking to move to Corpus Christi, we want them to feel welcome, and that we want them to feel like this is a climate that they can come in and grow their business, because that's going to, of course, bring in jobs for people. It's going to add to our tax base. So there's a lot of good things that
Are
happen
you
with that.
a broad tax base philosophy type of government guy? I mean, making more people, bringing more businesses in, paying a little bit of tax, or raising taxes on the ones that we have for what we need?
No. I fully support broadening our tax base, and of course, leveling out the taxes that we have already, so that what I want is for Corpus Christi to be prosperous, and that's not going to happen overnight.
Sure.
But you right a ship slowly, and right now we're in that process.
Well, and again, one thing I think I was negligent in saying earlier is that Ben is a city council member for District 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, 2. And so generally, and I always ask everyone this, I know usually, because I've asked, whether I'm in one district or another, but District 2, what does that encompass, really?
District 2 is roughly the middle of town on the bay side of the freeway. So its borders are the rough borders are going to be SPID, Airline, Alameda, a little bit of Ocean Drive around Cole Park, and then back up Morgan to Crosstown, and then back towards the malls.
The good part of Cole Park. I mean, but yes. Okay, well, you've got, District 2 is a pretty important district then. I mean, that's what I would consider the heart of a lot of activity. The malls, for one. And, my business is there. My home is in that area. So, and you've got one of the most popular parks in all of Corpus Christi or Nueces County. So, or at least a part of it anyway. And that has a pretty diverse group of people as well. I think
Definitely.
that encompasses, if I'm not mistaken, you get some of Lamar Park, right? No?
A little bit of that area.
Which is the highest. That zip code, I found this out recently, but that is the highest per capita household income of any zip code or any area, one single area in Corpus Christi or Nueces County. So then you go from that, and then it's very diverse, just a little bit further over, and you have not the lowest, but on the lower end of the economic spectrum. So
it's so District 2. It's the middle of town. It's one of the older, more established areas of the city. So we do have our street and infrastructure issues. Like you said, the economics there are diverse also. But that is a good, I feel like it's a good cross-section of the entire city.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, it's good practice if you want to run for mayor, I would think, one of these days. I mean, because you do have a good cross-section of the entire city, and the heart of what has been, what people still consider the best part of Corpus Christi. I mean, it's there's often discussions, I'm sure you've heard about either one side or the other of the freeway, coming through. And it's really not as distinct as it once was, but that area where you are is really what people favor, I think, is best part of Corpus Christi. Except for the people who live on the island, they would disagree with that, and the people that are out there, towards the new high school and whatnot, they might disagree with that as well. But everybody still likes it over there at the very least.
I've got to say, I am biased. I do believe that District 2 is the best district in the city. So much so that when the new city manager moved in, he chose to live in District 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that says something.
It does. And no, I think it is a good district, and I'm in it too, so it has to be good. But then again, I have this philosophy, like, if you'll take me in District 2, maybe it's not that good. Anyway, but when you look at this, and I say this because we were talking about tourism and how that affects us, and that's one of those things you do look towards. We're all looking at, with greater and greater enthusiasm, this new harbor bridge that is erecting itself. Almost looks like a transformer. As it's fascinating to watch this thing as it tracks on itself, as it extends and builds. And it was a year ago when I walked across the top of the harbor bridge and did a live broadcast on my Facebook and took pictures and video, and you could see it. It's still off in the distance a little bit. Now it's up close and personal, and we're not that far away, although every now and then it seems like there's some concern about how long it's going to take, and there's delays.
Yeah.
What are we looking at is the latest you've heard and its completion, because I've been a proponent of it for 15 years. It's been coming, right? And primarily because I didn't have anything against the look of the old bridge, but a little bit of improvement will allow us a lot greater opportunity in commerce. And
I agree.
I think that's the biggest thing. And again, 15 years ago, people were saying it doesn't need to be replaced. 15 years later, with a bridge as old as it is, and it's getting at that point where it's the same age. It was the same age in 2008 as a major bridge that collapsed. If you remember, I'm trying to think, somewhere up north, and hundreds of people died. That doesn't mean that it's going to do so, but you have to be reasonable and look at the life expectancy of infrastructure like this, especially as much as it's used and as unsafe as it is when it freezes. When we have freezing, the angle on that bridge is frightening.
Yeah, so the contractor came and gave us an update just during the last council meeting, and they talked about the delays in the project. The biggest delay is the design firm that they used for the major span, the middle span of that bridge. So there's some issues there that they're working through, and that TxDOT is heavily involved. They reminded us that safety is going to be the number one priority above all else, and so I can agree with that. But they also said that there's still plenty of work to be done on both sides. So work is going to continue while they get the middle span issue addressed.
All right. Now, here's the thing, is that it seems to me that this bridge, even though we're talking about, I mentioned something with the port, because we'll be able to take taller ships, and I think a lot of people don't understand how critically short the current harbor bridge is, because from a regular boat of any kind that you might be in, even a ferry boat taking a tour, you have the same experience that I did when I was in the second grade going to Corpus Christi Christian School, no longer there, but you look up. And my first grade teacher, Mrs. Fish, said, look how tall that is. And even then, she was saying many ships are too tall to go under that. And it's just impossible for you to fathom because it looks so high. But I've had John Valls, talking to him before, who was involved with the port. He's got pictures where he's on top of the crow's nest, whatever you might want to call it, on these ships. And literally, he's photographing that much clearance.
Oh, wow.
I mean, 3-4 inches. Any kind of disturbance in that channel, and there's going to be some crashes with the bridge, and ships have gotten bigger. They're carrying more, so it's going to be something certainly that helps us there with our port industries, but also the bridge moving is now going to open up real estate that really hasn't been viable like it's going to be for 60, 70 years and maybe longer. You know, Corpus Christi, if you look at old maps, I think it's fascinating because where we are broadcasting from right now, if you could put a window through this wall, you would look out over what was once the heart of Corpus Christi. The old Bayview Cemetery is over there, and I've seen some plots. A friend of mine, David Loeb, he's into a lot of real estate, and he's got some of the old maps of Corpus Christi, and it's fascinating to see. Where we are was an elevated place where a lot of people lived. Homes were all here, and the brand new part of expansion for Corpus Christi in the 1930s was over there, what we call the Del Mar area now, which is just now getting revitalized. A lot of those homes built in 1915, 20. Corpus Christi was all right by that area where the bridge is. And once we started making a permanent way for people to get across, instead of, we could do it the old way where they had boards and you drove your you had to keep your car on those as you went across. It's locked off a lot of property from being accessible, right? Now, the courthouse is also one of those, the old courthouse that I think made a mistake in not repairing when we evacuated it, back in, was it 1976 or so? And we had somebody who was going to buy this, and I got to ask about this because the property now, in anticipation of this, should be a really good investment. And what happened with the council? Because it looked like we were being, the public was being sold on, we've got somebody who's going to buy this, they're going to come in, and then as I understand it, it was a couple of $100,000 that they couldn't meet as far as payment goes, and it all fell apart. Where are we now with that?
Well, so that's the county courthouse. It's owned and managed by Nueces County. And at the time, the county commissioners and the county judge at the time were working with a contractor or a buyer who couldn't come up with the funds to close the deal.
Which makes it seems, with what you have and how little that was, I'm pretty sure I could run around and find some people to help pitch in some money to get to that level. For that,
as far as the city side goes, there's back taxes that are owed on it, and so we were discussing on what we can do as a city to help make the transition easier so that the buyer can come in and transform that building. So that deal fell through. Last I heard, the county's working on trying to secure another buyer for the building.
Right. Well, and I'm glad that they are, because it was refreshing to hear somebody say that it could be refurbished, because, during my 20 years or 26 years in broadcasting, that had been studied what it would cost to refurbish this 6 times at least, at a couple of $100,000, $500,000 at one point in time to have it studied, and everybody concluded up until recently that it would cost more money to repair it than it would be to rebuild it from scratch. And so I went around telling everybody exactly what I'd been told by everyone else that had done a study. Then we have some people who say that they can make it cost effective. Things change, but the buzz that is still going around, and this happens with every kind of project, is that the back taxes are what's killed it. Now, I feel fairly certain that this was from the source of whomever it was trying to buy it, but were we trying to get $10 million in back taxes out of these people for buying the building? Was that what was the city's objective?
That wasn't the city's objective. Like I said, this council, it's a pro-growth, pro-business, and we definitely want to see something happen with that courthouse. And so we looked at what's owed in back taxes, and we discussed what are our options to either just doing away, with the taxes, or accepting a lower amount.
Right.
And so that's what some of the discussion was.
And that would be my question. This is an area where it once was a thing you heard a lot more about, the term back taxes. In this day and age, most people's real estate purchasing experience comes from buying a house, right? So if you buy a house, if somebody else didn't pay the taxes on it, that's still chasing them, right? Not the new buyer. That wasn't always the case, I guess. And in this situation, whoever was the last owner, which I thought was the Texas Historical Commission, right? At one point in time, they had, it's a protected thing. They owned the deed to it, or somebody along those lines. I don't know that we could ever feasibly get back taxes from something that's been sitting vacant as long as that has been sitting vacant from anybody other than a governmental entity, and then we'd be paying it anyway. all of us in those situations. How does this back tax thing really attach itself? I thought it would always follow whoever was owning it when it was last possessed by a private entity.
Yeah, so from what I understood and what I recall is that it was a private entity that owned it. They went belly up, and so that I'm not sure if the organization just ceased to exist. If they went bankrupt, I don't know what happened
An
there.
LLC or a sole proprietorship or whatnot. I didn't, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if nobody owns it and the county owns it, is it the county that would pay the city taxes on it? Or does it have to go to this? Because if I'm buying property, there's a few instances in which, it's buyer beware. One, if they tell you there's anthrax, but don't worry about it. It's treatable. It's still anthrax. The other is, there's a little back taxes. If they say little, you definitely want to make sure and pay attention to what is this definition of little. The Hindenburg, that was a little blimp. But no, these sorts of things I think are maybe a policy that the council might look at, and we don't have that many buildings in that state, but we do have a lot of old historical buildings in Corpus Christi in a few different places that people aren't aware of. And it's a shame that we have had, as paranoid as we are about hurricanes, we haven't had that many that have hit us, but the ones that have done some serious devastation. The 1919 hurricane. And Murphy Givens, formerly with the Caller Times, did a great job of putting a story together and finding old photographs. Talked to him one time as well. That wiped out some of the greatest architectural achievements of this area. One of those being the Nueces Hotel and a few others, but the photographs survived. There's some homes in town that have large elements. A fireplace from the Nueces Hotel. I've looked at buying them. Some of the bricks from the Nueces Hotel. But with few things that we have left, I would like to see them preserved as best we can without getting too involved in becoming the parent of whoever it is that's buying it, trying to direct what they're going to do. I mean, I think if you look back in history, we saw the Frost Building, also known as the Lichtenstein Building. I think that sat undeveloped for the longest time because the city was going to get involved in managing who was going to buy it and then allegedly give them a break in the price and make them do certain things to it. And then it became something where it was very limited and nobody really wanted to touch it. Once we, I think loosened things up a bit, property sold, and we saw investment in what is a key area of downtown. We're going to have that from time to time. Should we be even considering tacking on back taxes to new buyers coming in who are going to make a big investment and create a viable structure where now it is something only a few of us quirky types that like history know about and look into?
I think really that we should probably look at that on a case-by-case basis. Certainly in the instance of the county courthouse, I want to do everything that we can to make it easier to move in and renovate the building, and if that means forgiving taxes, we haven't collected them for this long already, so I'm not counting on that money. You see new businesses and really downtown coming back to life.
Good. Any aspirations of running for mayor?
With Wix, you can create a professional website that looks stunning. Just go to Wix.com. You can update it and keep it fresh whenever you want. I like changing up the background. It instantly gives my site a whole new look. I constantly add new photos. Here are some of my latest, which I love. Let people find you online. Wix SEO Whiz helps you grab those top search results. It looks amazing.
You have two main choices when considering billboard advertising: digital billboards and static billboards. Both sign types are great for building brand awareness. For the purpose of this video, we'll just be talking about digital billboards. At Blip, you pay each time your ad is displayed, as opposed to a long-term contract. On average, the ad displays for 8 seconds. We'll call this a blip. The cost of a blip can vary, but on average is around 10 cents. What changes the cost from blip to blip? Location, timing, and sign availability can all affect the price of your blip. But at the end of the day, billboards are great tools for building brand awareness and recognition.
people have taken an interest in some of these old homes and refurbishing them. There's even an old building, and I know there's history to it, I just don't know what it is, that's right there on the corner of Staples and Furman. That was a church at one point in time, I guess, or something along those lines. But it's got some history because that architectural design isn't something that's done very often.
Yeah.
Buildings like that are like the last bit of something that once it is refurbished, the rest of the street is like you've gone down Mayberry, you know?
Yeah.
What do we do to get that going back into our city again? Because really, sidewalks, streets, curb appeal, that ups value in property, and that means our city has more money to do things with because your property valuation is going to be easier to increase because people will sell their homes for more.
You know, one of the tools that we have on the city council is the ability to create tax increment reinvestment zones. Right now, we have one downtown, and you can see the benefits of that right now.
Right.
With all the development coming in. We have the tax increment reinvestment zone, or TIRZ for
Right.
short. We have one there on the island, and there's a lot of things that are happening on the island right now. Recently, the most recent one that we created was for North Beach. So North Beach has its own tax increment reinvestment zone, and the idea is that the property values, as they increase, that spread between the increase and today's value is going to get put in a separate account, and as that accumulates, it's going to get reinvested back into the community. You see new businesses and really downtown coming back to life because of that mechanism.
Yeah.
And we're able to provide building improvements, tax incentives for people that are coming in, renovating the building, they're creating jobs, and I think that that's going to happen with North Beach also. After so the tax increment reinvestment zone is in place, but it takes a couple of years for the dollars to accumulate.
Well, and I was skeptical of the TIF when I first heard of it. It was a brand new mechanism, at least for most of us here, when Kennedy Causeway was being rebuilt. I think the only thing that lingered with that is that there was some misrepresentation about what that Kennedy Causeway would do. I still think we should go back and look at, I mean, it's great that it's elevated so we have a safer exit, because during hurricanes, it really was so low, water would be over the top before we were even in a real serious situation. So evacuation was an issue. But circulation in the bay is something that was promised, and it was never designed to do that. And there was a voice or two at the time that was willing to risk losing that by coming out and saying no. We did pass the TIF, and it got built. So my fear is that those tax increment finance zones, or TIFs, they stay around forever. And I'm going to give another example that's easier for us to talk about, because it's not something this city council has done. But I remember when Beltway 8 in Houston was being constructed as a tollway. I think I still have it somewhere, because I had a friend of mine who worked for one of the refineries, and he was an engineer, and he was being transferred to Houston. So it said on there that it would be 10 years, and then it was going to go away. Well, it no longer did it not go away, but now the price for going through the toll is doubled at least, and there's more places that they toll you on as you go through. That's the biggest fear I think most people have, is like 10 years, unfortunately, I have to say this, goes by way faster than I would like to think. Yes. And before you know it, it's like you hear about places getting a 20-year lease. That's nothing. 60-year leases are, when it comes to government or public property, are much more common because of how quickly it goes by and how long it takes to turn a profit in many instances. Is there any, TIF, does it have to be approved by the voters, or can this be something that's created by City Council alone?
So the mechanism that we're using, it's tax increment reinvestment zone.
Oh, sorry.
And so that's created by the council.
Okay.
We have the authority to do that. The good thing about it is that, as in the case of North Beach, that's good for 20 years. And so we've partnered with the other taxing entities, which is going to be the city, the county, hospital, Del Mar College, A&M Corpus Christi. We all have to agree on it, or just not participate.
Doesn't work.
So just like with North Beach,
right.
we passed the TIRZ. Del Mar hasn't come to the table yet.
Okay.
We anticipate that they will, but they just haven't done it just quite yet. So.
And that is a slight difference too. I'm glad you brought that up, because they're not exactly the same function. The tax increment finance zone and the tax increment reinvestment. What is it now again?
Zone.
Yeah,
Tax
zone.
increment
Yes.
reinvestment zone.
There's a little bit of a different function. I think that tax increment finance zone is a public approved type mechanism, whereas this other, and there may be more differences, is one that council can engage on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And but I mean, it really is something though that it puts an incentive for growth, because if you don't have growth, then you don't make any more money and we don't get the results. So because the taxes as they are will go distributed for the things that they're distributed for. It's only
Yes.
above that amount to a certain extent that is earmarked for the project.
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct.
But here, North Beach has got a lot of exciting things going on. I mean, it's not just that we have this new bridge, but North Beach is going to be affected significantly by this. And I think for the first time, North Beach has a potential to get back to what it once was. And I don't know if anybody's ever done the research or looked at this, but Corpus Christi, back at the turn of the century, and maybe certainly even a little bit before, had some great things that drew people, famous people, from all over the country and all over the world. We had was it at least a 3-level or 4-level ship that was much like the USS Lexington, anchored out off in the water, and they had dance floors on every level. You had bars and parties of different types on each level, so whatever kind of dance you wanted to go to. They had a beach with the classic photos of, everybody was wearing long johns back then, and they had shaded tents.
Yeah.
But it was immaculately beautiful. There was a big wooden structure that was it reminds me of like Snoopy's now, right? Or one of those businesses down there over the bridge where people would go and be able to eat and look out, and it had a really cool rustic look to it. But it's really, I think, because of the bridge, it's somewhat siphoned off the interest for that area. Would you say that has any kind of impact, or would you disagree?
Well, and I guess that's part of my incentive or motivation for how do I want to say it? For moving forward with the tax increment reinvestment
Right.
zone. The other thing that we approved was that Grand Canal project.
And that's the next thing I was
there
gonna
on
ask you
North
about,
Beach, yeah. And so I think that we are seeing some positive movement in that area, and it of course it's not going to happen overnight,
Sure.
but by the time it's all is said and done, I'm confident that I'm going to be able to look back and be happy and proud of the work that we did.
Well, Ben, and this is the thing too, is that as a council member from a district, and that's I think it was 1980 when, if I'm not mistaken, the city of Corpus Christi went from everybody was at large to this form of government that we have now. And I think Ben McDonald was mayor back then, if I'm not mistaken. I can't even believe I remembered his name, but he's passed away since. But he was a fixture at a number of Rotary clubs that invited me to speak, and I'd met him a number of times. And he was very proud of the work that they had done, giving more balance, because you had districts in which they could have a greater influence, and ensuring that that district, although it may not be as economically powerful as some others, they were going to have a representative. And then we still had the at-large. Mm-hmm. So that's where we got this combination from. But they established the districts in a way to try and make sure that the city had a balanced representation for the diversity and economic input that is part of our engine. And I think that this canal project, though, I mean, whether you're in District 2 or not, you get a chance to vote. I mean, as a council member, you're voting on the city as a whole.
Yes.
And so, although you may refer somebody to their specific council member, if they come up to you and go, "Oh, Ben, I've got this, and I live out there on the island." Well, you're in so and so's district, but you still are going to be voting on issues that impact them. So here, this canal project, I think, is exciting from what I've been able to hear. Now, I haven't caught up with the latest on it, but the fact that we had somebody impassioned about this that was able to work forward to get it to the point that it is, and having that sort of a thing has been a dream. We like San Antonio's Riverwalk. Yeah. That concept is good. Tell us, what do you know about this canal project?
Well, I think that it's going to be a really good, positive thing for the city. I think it has the opportunity to have a huge positive economic impact, not just for North Beach, for the entire city. We're hoping that once the Grand Canal is built, that we'll see more housing, high-density housing, that we'll see more retail, more restaurants, and just make it an attractive area for not only visitors, but for citizens of Corpus Christi. I'm really happy that we chose to move forward with it. There was a lot of discussion back and forth whether we should move forward with something like this or not. But in the end, we all agreed that we believe it's the right thing to do. We had an outside developer with a big vision, and what we approved for North Beach in the canal project is we approved the Grand Canal, and we opened it up to where it's going to have to go out for bid. So any interested parties are going to have to go through the bid process, and I just think that's the right way to do it, to make it fair and equitable for everyone. And I had one more point I was going to say.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, because this is the bid process. I agree we should always have one, but the lowest bidder, maybe not always the vision that we want, and that becomes the difficult thing, because there's no way to have that without uncertainty if you don't know who it is that we have elected to vote on these things. And one of the reasons why I like having this opportunity, and straight to the point, is that we get a chance to find out who these people are. So when you have somebody like Ben Molina, you're one of those guys, I don't worry about any ulterior motive. I know that when you go to a vote, it's what you really truly believe is in the best interest for everybody, not yourself or friends of yours or whatnot. And there's always that, even in an honest circumstance, because friends and people and everyone else that lives in this community also works in this community, and they want to have a certain outcome. And it's the most difficult thing to do the right thing when you have to disagree with your friends. But I have no doubt that you do that, and I do it as well. I just apologize a lot afterward, because I really, you hate to let anybody down. But sometimes, we need to be able to look and see, this guy is a little bit higher than the others, maybe not the highest, maybe sometime I don't know. It would be tough to sell if you picked the highest bidder. But somewhere in the middle of it, or somewhere above rock bottom, there's likely somebody who's worth that extra bit. It's like what every other business tries to market themselves as. Hey, I'm not the cheapest, but I will give you the best work.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with that, was the city manager, he went out and hired a new staff member that is going to be focused on that North Beach redevelopment. So they're going to kind of guide the process as it moves forward, and when we start talking about a design team coming in, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for the public to engage and provide input also.
And that's always fun. And I can tell you, if you have a talk radio show, those moments are always great to jump in on. But popular opinion, sometimes it's like it's a chicken and the egg scenario I propose. But sometimes it's not the most popular idea at all, but it becomes that once people see it. It's like when I go to buy a house, I like to look at 30 or 40 homes. Real estate agents really get tired of me quick. But I do that because there's always one gem that the majority of people cannot see past the easiest things, because they think they want this until you give them a real vision of, it's like art. If everybody had the artist eye, then we could just have a random person say, do this, and it would be a masterpiece. But they know it when they see it because they feel it. And we have to have some trust in that context, I guess. It's just a difficult thing, because as a council member, if you don't go with the lowest bid and the most popular idea, it becomes troublesome.
Yeah.
So with all of this, though, I say, is there a time where you feel it's more important to lead and educate or sell the public on something than letting the public just always choose whatever seems to be the most popular? Because it seems to me not even in those cases is that genuinely organic, because somebody or some bodies are going to be influencing what the public thinks.
Yeah.
Why not lead from a point of information?
There has been instances like that, and that's tough, because us on the council and city staff, we have a lot of information provided to us, and that information, for the most part, is public information, And so it's available to anyone that wants to dig in and educate themselves. Even when city makes that information available, we try to make it easily accessible. A lot of times, I've run into people that will hear about an issue and they've already made a decision based on a small snippet of information that they've heard. And so when you go back and try to give them more information, sometimes they're open to listening. Other times, there's a remnant of a sense of distrust.
Yeah.
It's not that we're trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, but myself, we get a lot of information, and we want to make the best decisions. I want to make the best decision I can make based on that information.
Right.
And I'm always going to put the city's best interest first.
I do believe that, and with all enthusiasm possible, I say it's difficult, and it's also amazed me that when it comes to local politics, you have as much unwillingness to alter a personal opinion of an individual as you do in partisan presidential elections. And why I find that amazing is because there's very few times in which our local council is dealing with issues that are as moral compass polarizing, for lack of a better term, as what happens on the national level. It's not like we're dealing with the big issues every day of abortion or gun control or same-sex marriage or whatever it may be. A lot of times it's, should we dig this canal or not? And if somebody hears something, once they take a position, it is as if there's a fear that somehow you'll be discredited for anything else that you do if you acknowledge that was misinformed. And it's quite the contrary. I mean, really, when it comes to the people who make decisions and make the world work, they respect and honor people who are willing to acknowledge they didn't know a situation. It makes it easier if you don't go in calling everybody Hitler or whatever it is that disagrees with you and blaming them for the Holocaust. It's kind of hard to ratchet it down from that and do so with, oh, I was wrong, never mind. So, that's why I say people should really temper a little bit of use the Socratic method. Socrates, he still had to drink poison. His last words were, I drank what? Because he posed questions instead of making statements as a means by which to engage in debate. And it really does give you an opportunity. That's why I like straight to the point here. We're asking questions, and it gives us an opportunity to find out before we dig our heels in and work ourselves up on assumptions. Sometimes it takes one bit of truth that could mean something. We think about what that could lead to. Then we start assuming that what it could lead to at some point is actually a fact and emotionally act on that as if we know it is true. And then it's very hard to come back. And then you guys deal with that. Ironically, council gets more of that probably than anybody except the presidential elections.
We do get some of that. I'm reminded of a story. This happened recently. There's a gentleman that reached out, and he was talking about some things, and it really sounded like he had his conspiracy theories,
right,
that he wasn't sure about, and so I was talking with him, and I tried to get him some information that I thought would help him. I ran into him recently, and he said that that issue that he wasn't sure about, he decided to get involved with a certain organization that was one of the main components and drivers of this issue that he was concerned about. And so, as I was talking to him, he said that he's gone to meetings, he's talked to other people in that organization, and he's learned that much more about the organization that he made the decision that this organization is doing the right things. They're actually looking out for the best interests of the people. But he had those perceptions and misconceptions. But I was really impressed that he made the effort to get himself educated and get himself involved. And we as a city are that much better for it.
Oh, Ben, that's a rarity. It really is. I mean, I had somebody tell me that you can never change somebody's opinion. a lot of that depends upon who you are, but in general, that's true. I mean, I'll tell you how often that happens. When you're in an adamant debate with somebody, I can think of 3 instances in 26 years where somebody had a genuine change of opinion when they were adamant. 3 times. That's out of 3-4 hours a day, 5 days a week for 26 years. There's probably more, but that's just who I was, talking to. You only hear from one person at a time. But where you really make a difference is in all the other people that are listening to the exchange and the discussion. And that's something people forget about, because there's always other people listening. Mm-hmm. There's always other, watching this show.
Yeah.
If you and I disagree, how I conduct myself and how I engage with you is most important to the person who really is objective. If somebody's already on one side or the other, they're likely to stay that way. Yeah. But it's the undecided, those that don't know, they're going to make up their mind based on how you. So if you engage in personal jeers, jabs, without any ability or sign of willingness to investigate, look into, educate yourself, you're discrediting your cause. I mean, more than anything else, I guess you could look at it, because you're representative. And I say, no matter how little influence you think you may have in the world, how unattractive you may be, how unpopular you may be, there is always somebody who's heard what you said about an issue, and they're repeating your words as if they were their own.
Yes.
And think about how many times you've done it. I mean, I try to give credit where I can, but, if it's, can't always do that. You're hearing something said, and you're going, I agree with that. That's called narrative fidelity, meaning that it rings true with you. You'll repeat it, and that will be your position on an issue. It's just not done when you're around. And so everybody has to take, I think, a stock and responsibility for that. And Ben, I say this, here you're on council. It's November, come up for re-elections. And your wife, I've met her before, fantastic, by the way. I see she's a strong force of support. I mean, and like every good woman that I know, she'll help to keep us all in line. And so that's a good thing.
Yes.
Your kids are fantastic. Business, you still have to run your business.
Correct.
Does the council take away from your ability to do that all the time?
Council takes a lot of time. If you want to do it right, you want to do a good job, you have to put in the work. And so I'm fortunate. I've got a business partner who is very supportive. I'm still involved.
That's good, yeah.
But without that support system that I have in my life, my business partner, my wife, other friends and family that I lean on, I don't think that I would be as effective as I am on council.
Well, certainly, because having a support structure, people you trust, people who have your back, that's important, and that's a rarity in this day and age as well. In business, it's tough to find somebody that you can trust like that. When you do, I mean, to appreciate it without anybody having to tell you. So, now, do you have any future plans? I got to ask you this, just because it's me, and I've been encouraging you. Again, nothing against any current mayor, McComb, or anyone else, but at some point in time, he's going to be term limited out, right? Mm-hmm. I think, you would be a good face for the city. I mean, you're almost like Stonewall Jackson, except you're Happy Wall Jackson. You don't never seem to be upset. I know it's going to happen sometime, but no, you have a good means of calming effect, I think, and being reasonable. And you're not always, smiling and giddy all the time, but I mean, you do put, I think, you're like the William Bennett of local issues. You probably don't know who William Bennett is. He was an office holder under the George W. Bush, HW. Anyway, the first. He's just had a matter-of-fact way of presenting things. He's written a number of books. You're much thinner, slimmer, more handsome guy. But I've heard him speak in person a number of times. That's kind of what I find for you. It's just like, it's hard to argue with the way he puts it. Sounds good. Any aspirations of running for mayor?
Well, I love serving my city. I love serving the people of District 2. My hope is that I can serve for as long as I can. And the goal is to serve where the people will have me.
I like that answer, because it says nothing's written off yet. And that's straight to the point, even though it was a very smooth answer. I think that was fantastic. Ben, I appreciate you coming in, and we'll have you back again. We'll talk more about it. We'll find out what your favorite color is. I didn't ask you that. What is your favorite color?
White.
White?
White.
That is a unique answer.
I like white.
You want to guess my color?
I'm going to say gray.
Well, just because I have some showing up now, green, but I don't mind gray. I do have some gray suits that are nice. With a little bit of gray hair, you can pull off gray pretty good. But no, white. You were the first person I've ever asked that. And I got one more question before I let you go. This is something Catherine Childers told me when she used to do a lot of interviews, and so that's my source for this. I'm giving that. But what would people be most surprised to find out about you that they don't know?
Oh, okay. So a lot of people are surprised that I'm not a professional or even good in any way, but I do sing. I have helped with, and there's a local group here in town called Help, which is
I know them, yeah.
You're familiar with them. And
Hammonds is involved in that, I think, at one point in time, yeah.
Hammond's educational leadership program.
Yeah.
They're all about taking kids and exposing them to different opportunities in career paths. And so they have a fundraiser every year, and I've been involved for the past 3 or 4 years. I've done some La Bamba. I've done some Elvis.
I could see that. Now wait, were you in a talent show a while back that I emceed?
That was Help.
That was Help. There you go.
Yeah.
You know, you do a few things, and then pretty soon you're emceeing so much stuff. But I remember that, and you were Richie Valens.
I was Richie Valens.
You were Richie Valens. You've got the hair for it as well. Man, I'm impressed because I did not I remember seeing you there, and I was watching it, but I was like, for some reason there was so much going on, I didn't make the connection. But yeah, you were singing. Some people lip synced, so I didn't know, but you can sing.
I did sing. No, I didn't play the guitar. That was all an act.
Okay, all right. Well, I was about to ask you that.
I will admit that.
Right.
But no, there's a lot of people that don't know that I have been involved with that, and when they hear, it surprises them.
Well, I mean, I'm impressed. We'll have to have you come back and sing. I did a recording one time singing, and I was, hoping for one thing. They use it now when somebody runs over a cat in a movie. That's the soundtrack that they use. Yeah. So it didn't turn out so well for me. I'm not playing Richie Valens. I can tell you that. I can rap, but you don't want to hear that either. Anyway, hey, I appreciate it. Ben Molina, thank you so much. District 2, you don't want to miss District 2. If you get a chance to go through there, it's a fantastic place. And if you need anything in your District 2 or you want to ask, Ben Molina is a great source. I don't want to funnel everybody. Like there's a council member, you can call council if you have any questions. But we'll have you back again and talking about some of the other issues. And fascinating guy all the way around.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think enough people give him the credit he deserves, and I appreciate it once again. Straight to the point. We'll talk to you guys soon. I am Eric Von Wade, your host. Thank you for being there.